Good evening. This is Maia, Rasheed, and Damanpreet Singh on behalf of Brentwood Votes. This evening, we're here to conduct a campaign interview with Ms. Jovita Mendoza, a candidate for the Brentwood City Council representing District 1, but ultimately serving all in Brentwood. Welcome, Ms. Mendoza. How are you doing today, and is there anything you'd like to start off with saying to our followers and audience?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. During COVID, it's hard to campaign because you really can't get out as much as you really would. So thank you for having me. And I'm excited that, they talk about younger kids not being actively involved in politics, and I've seen that change. So I'm excited that you guys are doing this. I think it's great. I have seen a couple of names, I think on like the no drilling site. So it's exciting to me that younger people are getting involved in local issues because they're important. The big elections are the big elections, the national, but your everyday life is impacted locally. So I think this is fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, and with that said, let's get started with our first question. So, what's the first issue you'd like to kick off your first day in office with if you are hopefully elected?
Okay, so one of the first things is we as a city, I feel like, have become complacent and almost let developers run our city agenda. And one of the things that I discovered by going to city council meetings is the way things happen in a city is the mayor can put something on the city council agenda, or one of the council members can ask for something to be put on, it gets second, and then it gets put on the agenda. And that's how the city defines what projects it's going to work on. I had no idea. I just thought like anyone could say like, oh, I want to work on this, and it happens, and it's not. Like someone has to feel passionately about it, put it on the agenda. Someone has to have their back, say, okay, I'm with you. I want to work on that too, and have it happen. So making sure that our agenda has items that residents bring to them more than developers, because I have seen that there's an issue with developers monopolizing the time on the agenda, which then monopolizes the time that the staff has, right? So if all they're working on is development, then they're not working on anything for you or I. It's just to bring in new housing. But we know that there's things bubbling up that we've got to address. So that's one thing, is making sure the agenda is resident driven, not developer special interest driven. Another thing is I'm finding is it's a small town for the most part, and we are spending a lot of money on these elections. I wish I didn't have to. I would rather spend my money on something else because I am self-funding a lot of it. So I would like to bring to the agenda some kind of campaign reform. I don't understand how someone can get $20,000 from a developer, someone else gets $5,000, and they sit there and they make policy, and there's no way your psyche isn't impacted by getting $20,000. That's a lot of money. So I want some campaign reform. Overall city issues, again, the housing, we're growing fast. I mean, you guys have probably seen all of the growth since, you got here. But the problem is there's things that are falling through the cracks. Even last night, we had a homeless meeting because the county came out and did a point in time count, and they found that there was about 80 homeless, which I agreed with, because you have, the traditional like camps, right? That's what people think homeless are. But the homeless are way more than that. You have families that are evicted because they couldn't pay their rent or their mortgage, and they're in their cars. So it's comfortable that people don't see the tent and then they don't count them as homeless. Or you have your friends that become couch surfers, right? I've had them when we were younger, and those people are homeless too. Just because they can stay on my couch for a few nights doesn't mean that they have a stable, ongoing home. So there's issues like that we really have to address. But first, we have to admit there are problems. So I'm glad we had the meeting last night. The county came out like, yeah, you guys have 80. So some of you might think you have 30 and that everything's hunky-dory, but it's not. Like, you guys have an issue, and we have to figure out a way to help those individuals. So that's another issue. So slowing down the growth, which some people don't want. They get their bread and butter from developer fees. The city makes a lot of money. And the problem is once you're built out, what are you going to make money from then? You have no more developer fees. So we need to work on jobs, and jobs for people like me who already work, and people like you who are going to graduate from college and might want to stay locally, but you don't want to have to drive 2 hours to Walnut Creek, San Francisco, whatever it is. So I don't know if you know about the Innovation Center in Brentwood, an area that's going to be dedicated to kind of a business park. I'm really excited about that. I think that we can find businesses that maybe are not traditional, maybe they're a little different, but we've got to find a way to bring jobs here. And that helps on a lot of levels. So higher paying jobs so people can buy a home and stay here. Less commute. I mean, we're all commuting and we're all tired. We don't have quality time with our families. You might miss a game with your kid, a play, whatever the case may be. When it was me, a debate because I was part of the business club. But it increases greenhouse gases. And people seem to not think about that. Like if you can reduce cars on the road, you have less greenhouse gases, which I did see Newsom, I don't know if you saw it this week, he wants to put into effect that if your job can be done from home, you'll be working from home 3 days a week in order to reduce greenhouse gases in the state, which I think is fantastic. So that would help with jobs, with commutes, but also tax revenue, because we're going to run out of that home tax revenue. So there's a lot going on when I first start. I mean, I can go on. There's still emergency services. There's a lot. But those are kind of, the big things. Emergency services, we need to find a way to help them, but it's a different agency. So how much can we step in? How much can we step out? Do we have any extra funds in our budget that we can have a dedicated line item for them to house, to put gentlemen or women in a firehouse that we pay for? I don't know, and I won't know the details until I'm elected, but that's also an issue. So that's kind of, there's more, but that's kind of high level.
Okay, so moving on to the interview, you mentioned you're kind of making Brentwood a self-sustaining city. So how would you go about turning Brentwood into a self-sustaining city and maintaining that? And in doing so, how would you go about building new jobs without driving out existing sectors in town?
Yeah, so like I said, we have an area that's dedicated. The land is already zoned. You can't do housing on it. You can't do anything else, although a developer is trying to rezone it right now. So us, the residents, are fighting it. But that land is dedicated for that. So we won't be shifting, we're not going to push farmers out, because agriculture is a big part of our history. That's why my husband and I moved out here. We love the town. We love the agriculture. We don't want to sacrifice any of that. But farmers are also struggling. And I think the only way we're going to be able to help them is bringing in money. So you help them bringing in money by bringing all these, bringing these jobs here. People stay here. They shop here. So that's going to be a benefit. But also we need to find a way to, like cherry picking. Cherry picking has become like a holiday in itself. How do we create holidays around our other agricultural sectors that bring in people and bring in tourism that will help, the current agricultural economy that's here, and help them make more money, because they are struggling. We're going to have to work with the county on zoning, because, some of these farmers might want like an Airbnb, right? So you and your friends can go away to apple picking or whatever it is that you're doing, but you need somewhere to stay, and there's really not that many places to stay out here. So I know that they're interested in that. So we've got to get creative. We've got to think differently. We've got to market our city. I think we have to start marketing it differently. We do have a consultant that's helping with this innovation center area, but no one buys things like they used to buy them. So why are you going to market your city the same way? I think I buy half my stuff off of like Instagram ads now. Seriously. So we're going to have to think about marketing our city differently, and also being truthful about what our city has to offer, because we've seen a lot of businesses come in to the streets of Brentwood and they've left. I used to work for Gap Inc. I know people that work there, and I don't think we were as truthful about the spending capacity of the residents of Brentwood. So can we do something else there? Should we be looking for different kinds of retail fronts that people would visit more often? And even with the younger kids, I told you I have a high schooler. There's nowhere she can shop around here. Besides Tilly's, and there's nowhere. So you guys actually have a great deal of spending power, and we need to figure out how to make you shop here and not go to Walnut Creek, to your Brandy Melville or whatever out there. You guys need to stay here.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Yeah, there's literally just the Tilly's and the PacSun. I'm always out in Walnut Creek for that reason. So yeah, those are definitely great ideas.
I know.
Yeah. So moving on with that, we did talk about, you mentioned Brentwood experiencing high population booms and like the idea of growth. How would you address rising costs of like living and supporting livable wages?
Yeah, well, that's where we're going to have to get creative. We're going to have to, so again, everything gets on the staff calendar for what they do by city council. So we've got to make the Innovation Center one of the top priorities for our city, and finding great companies that are looking for space that offer great wages. And it's going to be hard. I'm not saying it's not going to be easy. Like, we're going to have to be traveling up and down California, even maybe, Arizona, Oregon, Washington, to find companies that might want to come here. Because what I'm also finding is that a lot of people are moving to Brentwood now because they can work from home. So maybe you're working from home, but do you want to work from home every single day? So let's find companies that are giving flexibility that might need satellite offices also, and look at that. But I think the Innovation Center has to be done fast, because that's going to be the solution to, a few of our problems, the tax income, the livable wages. I think that's going to be key.
So how would you go about supporting and empowering low-income, underserved, and homeless populations? Because I remember you mentioned how the homeless population is greater than a lot of people are aware.
Yeah, so, there's different parts of it. And right now, there is a report out. It's called the Point in Time Report for Contra Costa County that will tell you the different groupings. And I think it was in the 40% of the people who are homeless is because they've had like financial issues, or, they couldn't afford their house, which I consider also financial issues. And then there's also the sector that have substance issues and maybe mental health. When I was growing up, the federal government and the state governments actually took care of everyone with mental health and substance issues. It was something that was funded. Later on, the government pulled that money in the 80s. And I don't think we have all of the money in Brentwood to take care of it, but I really think we need to have conversations at the county and at the state level to figure out what funds we have that can help people. I was actually very happy with the call that the city had yesterday. There was 2 representatives from the county, and they have so much to offer, more than they ever did. And there are so many people out there actually talking to people and finding them and giving them lists of resources. So I think it's getting better, and I think COVID was kind of like the shot in the arm that our society needed to push us forward in spending those dollars. But off the bat, they can call 211 to find resources. That's going to tell them where to go. But we have to get out there, and I don't know the legalities of it yet. But is that us, the city, that goes out? I know the county comes out, but we're here every single day, and those are our neighbors. I mean, that might have been someone that lived down the street that lost their house. So we're going to have to find a way to give them access to the service and find it and be open to it. And sometimes that takes a few visits with someone until they gain your trust. So I'm not saying it's going to be fixed overnight. And I'm not saying everyone wants the help, like you're going to clear out homeless, because some people don't want the help. But anyone who wants it, we should be ready and willing and able to provide them with the help and send them in the right direction. There's a whole PowerPoint from yesterday. I'll email you the presentation, because I was extremely happy with all the additional services that are being offered right now.
Yeah, we'll be sure we'll look over and we'll share it with everyone as well.
Perfect.
I really appreciate your honesty with the idea of consent and comfort from homeless populations. As someone who's who was low income themselves, I understand sometimes you're not inclined to take help immediately. So I really appreciate that you acknowledge that. That's incredible. So moving on.
I grew up, my parents were immigrants. They worked in the fields. We were not well off growing up. And I think there's a little bit of pride sometimes that gets in the way, especially if you're newly homeless. It's a very difficult situation and conversation to have.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. So I remember we were talking about mental health with homeless. That mental health impacts a lot of us, and it's something that's somewhat stigmatized in society. Personally, we see that there's mental health and a clear lack of resources and safe spaces. Especially personally, we realize that in our public schools. And it's been a growing concern among young voters and Brentwood voters overall. So what we were wondering is, how would you go about promoting mental health awareness and showing the young generation that they have resources that will help them go through this? Yeah,
we have a very open dialogue in my household. We talk about mental health because I think if you don't talk about it in households, then kids think there's something wrong. But we talk about it openly. They could be sad about not being in school. They could be depressed about it. And it's never a bad conversation to have. One of my questions to someone was, why does everyone work in silos? So you have the city, you have the fire department, you have the school systems, and then there's 2 school systems. Police is part of the city, but I still feel like they're a little bit of a silo. And I think that one of the things that I want to do, and I've talked to, a few of the people running for school boards, I'm like, we've got to talk, because these kids are having issues. And if I see it at the city, I should be sharing with you, and you should be sharing with me, because sometimes people don't know who to go to and who to talk to. So we've got to be more collaborative when it comes to different city agencies, because I might not know, but someone on the school board knows. And so if we have this ongoing meeting that we talk about what's going on with the kids and have open dialogue, I think that will help. I don't know if our city meets with counselors to understand what the issues are. So I don't know if I'm going to be allowed to, but hopefully I can get a little bit more involved in the schools when that comes. I was excited. I don't know if you've talked to Stephanie William Rogers. She's running for Brentwood Unified. And she said one of the most important things she wants to do is make sure she's walking campuses and talking to teachers and talking to students, because hearing it firsthand is the best way. So, I mean, for me on that one, it's their school system, but as a city, we all live here and we're all part of the same community. So let's start talking a little bit more, and let's not be so siloed.
For sure.
So as you know, like, transparency is obviously something that the voters want. So with all the privileges and responsibilities held in a city council seat, how would you go about working with the Brentwood community to maintain transparency between, yourself and the Brentwood citizens? And how will you ensure that you remain a leader by the people for the people, while maintaining the challenges associated with elected office and privileged information?
So I'm going to be honest. I'm pretty open about everything. Like, everyone knows everything, I think, from rezone to Measure L to the oil drilling to Bridal Gate to, so I'm going to have to be very careful about the legalities of things, because I know there is legalities. But for me, I've always communicated on the Alliance for a Better Brentwood Facebook page. I will always communicate on the Alliance for a Better Brentwood page. A lot of people come there looking for information regarding Brentwood. I repost things. I thought COVID numbers were very important, so I've been posting COVID numbers. I now do it every other day because I've gotten a little bit busy, but I still think they're important. So I'll still keep posting. I think once I'm on council, the great thing is that people can come, as soon as we are allowed to be together, they can come to city council and they can come and tell me whatever they want. And I can tell you right now, they're not all going to be happy with me, right? There are people who are pro-growth. There are people who, like, I put out information on the oil drills and they're like, drill, baby, drill. But I'll always be accessible. They can come and talk to me. And, I've let some of the council have it when I'm not happy with them. And I would hope people would come to me. Like, I won't take it personal. Like, I'll learn from it. But I'm going to be an open book for as long as it's legally possible. I'll be sharing information.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Moving on, with all the current national conversation centering racial and restorative justice, how will you go about meeting citizens' demands to uplift, amplify, and center citizens of all backgrounds and experiences? How will you show up as an ally and foster systemic belonging for all people of color, members of the LGBTQIA+ community, citizens with disabilities, low-income and/or homeless citizens, and all other underserved and marginalized peoples? And then most importantly, how will you ensure these actions don't fall into any performativism and fail to yield actions?
Yeah, so it's funny because I did have a call. So I have a full-time job, and I just did a review of civil unrest and how companies are addressing it. And my biggest pet peeve is that companies are like, oh, now I care about Black Lives Matters, and now I care about LGBT, and oh, wait, it's Hispanic Heritage Month. And my comment to them today, and I wasn't even thinking about the city job. I was just talking about my job and what we do is, like, you have to be genuine, right? You can't all of a sudden you care about LGBT, or Black people or Mexican people, whatever the case may be, or low income people. It's got to be part of your fiber and who you are. And it's hard for me because of how I grew up. Like, I can sniff it out when it's fake. So and I'll call out people like all the time, like, dude, that was really racist. Or like, did you hear what you said? And maybe you don't realize what you're saying, but this is what you're hearing. Someone on city council did say something racial one time. I was floored. And I had to send him and their HR department an email because there's certain things I will put up with anytime it's anything about orientation, race, like I just can't handle it. So it's weird to get this question because I don't know how to not be me. And I call it the fly swatter method. Like as soon as I hear it, I'm on it. So, you know, I don't know. And we do have underprivileged areas in our town. And, you know, I've been talking to Johnny Rodriguez about it. And there is a huge part of field farm workers that have been forgotten by everyone. So what are we going to do about that? And there is now a group of moms that's helping address it. So we need to find it because sometimes they don't go speak to us. My job is going to be is if there's an underprivileged community, how do we go find it and bring them to speak to us? Because I can think whatever I want to think, but I need everyone else on the council to hear it too. So I don't know if you know Ariel, she came and spoke at city council. I mean, I was floored that people look shocked that there is racial issues in the high school because I hear it from my kids, right? So I was just like, how do they not know? Like, what rock are they living under that they don't realize this is a problem? So, I mean, I don't know if I answered your question. To me, it's part of who you are. And if you see something, say something. And I think I'm known for that. I was told that people freak out when I go to city council because they don't know who I'm going to yell at that day. So I will say something if I see something.
Amazing answer. I like how you're just very open and transparent, obviously. And so we're very aware of your work in organizing and mobilizing the community against oil and gas drilling, and we applaud you for these mass efforts as fellow community organizers ourselves. What we and many other voters would like to know is how would you not only build on this specific work, but expand this work to other issues and policy matters negatively impacting the local environment and climate daily?
Yeah, so I've thought about that because I've been very issue based, which is now there's a problem, I got to take care of it. And I've been thinking, so when I'm on council, I'm assuming I'm going to win. I'm hoping. I'm crossing my fingers. How do I become more strategic? Because I shouldn't wait to have a problem before I address it. I should be more strategic about things. And I'm going to have to work with staff. What are we seeing? What's going on? Also, many times residents know about things before we know about them at the city level. So again, how do we get people speaking to us and telling us things that are going on? One of the things we got to do is make it more accessible to speak to city council. And I didn't know when I moved here how to get involved or what to do. So like now when there's like important city council meetings, I get on my Facebook. I'm like, okay, this is how you log on and this is what you do. But so yes, oil and gas drilling became important because it was happening now, but it's going to be my job to keep an eye out and to hear what people are saying, especially when it comes to the environment, because we know, some people can argue that the fires are not due to global warming because, we don't rake our forest. I disagree with that. I think that global warming is definitely causing the change in weather. I had never seen lightning like we saw that one night. Like, it was insane. You can't tell me that's not the earth changing the way, our weather patterns, right? So we've got to do something. And I know we're just one little town, but we're one town that then can influence Oakley and then can influence Antioch. And that's what, people talk about our little issue in Brentwood. And I'm like, it's one little issue in Brentwood, which now I realize is kind of a bigger issue because we're part of Contra Costa. And now I look at COVID numbers and why does Richmond, San Pablo have such a high percentage of the population with COVID rates? Well, it's because they have depressed immune systems and respiratory systems because of the refineries that are causing global warming that are making them sick. So it's all together, and I'm going to have to figure out how to take all of these issues, because there's a lot of issues, and how do I prioritize every one of the issues based on what the residents want.
Yeah, we appreciate that insight. That's like literally stuff we learn in schools, but we don't hear it from our adults, and it's like really weird. So yeah.
I know.
Yeah, we appreciate that insight and everything you said. That concludes the interview on our part. We tried to keep it short for the sake of youth voters, and we know people are busy in general, but we covered a lot of ground, and you went above and beyond with your answers, so we really appreciated that. So yeah, thank you
Oh
so
my
much,
gosh.
Ms. Mendoza, for participating in this event and sharing your views. It was really enlightening. So yeah, we wish you the best of luck in the election. And thank you to everyone who viewed this election today. We hope you have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.